The real story behind the land of Palestine.
Why should we call it that?
And the claims to the territory.
This is not quite historically true.
So who really owns this sacred land?
To call the Jews occupiers in their own home, this is really a unique travesty of history.
Find out on today's 700 Club Interactive. Good morning and welcome to the show. It's one of the most volatile land disputes in history. Both the Jews and the Palestinians claim ownership of the biblical lands of Judea and Samaria, known today as the West Bank.
Palestinians claim their ancestors have lived there for thousands of years, long before the Jews. But is that claim supported by history? Gordon Robertson takes a closer look at the facts.
In 1969, Israeli Prime Minister Golda Meir made headlines with this comment: "There is no such thing as the Palestinian people. It's not as if we came and threw them out and took their country. They didn't exist." Golda's statement was controversial, but as it turned out, many Arab leaders and historians agreed with her. In 1937, Arab leader Ani Abdul Hadi made this statement to the British Peel Commission: "There is no such country as Palestine. Palestine is a term the Zionists invented. There is no Palestine in the Bible. Palestine is alien to us." Nearly a decade later, Arab historian Philip Hitti agreed. In his testimony to the Anglo-American Committee, "There is no such thing as Palestine in history. Absolutely not." In 1956, a Saudi representative to the UN stated, "It is common knowledge that Palestine is nothing but southern Syria." And more recently, Syrian dictator Hafez al-Assad gave this lecture to PLO leader Yasser Arafat. Never forget this one point: there is no such thing as a Palestinian people. There is no Palestinian entity. Palestine is an integral part of Syria.
With the Peel Commission of 1936, the British government offered for the first time the partition of the land, the partition of Palestine into a Jewish Palestine and into an Arab Palestine. We were all Palestinians because this was the nature of this administrative unit, Palestina. Now the Palestinians are owning this nationality as being the nation of Palestine, but this is not quite historically true.
So what is the historical truth? Who are the Palestinians and what are their claims to the land of Israel? Let's take a look. Many Palestinian Arabs, including Arafat, have claimed to be descendants of the ancient Canaanites. A convenient argument, since the Canaanites were the first known inhabitants of the land of Israel. Even as recently as May of 2014, a PA spokesman stated that the Palestinians have been in the land for 5,000 years. But history shows that there's no way the Palestinians could be related to the Canaanites, because the Canaanites were almost completely obliterated by the Israelites in the 13th century BC. The few that remained were assimilated into Israelite culture. Palestinians also claim that the ancient Philistines are their ancestors, and it's true that they take their name from the tribe of Goliath. But do they actually share DNA? The Philistines were a seafaring people who came from Crete, the largest of the Greek islands.
The Philistines got their name from the Hebrew word Plishtim, which actually means invaders. Palestine means invaded land. Why should we call it that?
When the Philistines invaded Israel in the 12th century BC, they stayed close to the Mediterranean coast. They never settled in Jerusalem, Hebron, or Jericho, all cities claimed today by the Palestinians. By the 7th century BC, the Philistines had been assimilated by the Assyrians, then conquered by the Babylonians. From there, they disappeared from the pages of history. And experts say no one alive today could prove Philistine lineage. But if the Palestinians want to claim them, they would have to acknowledge that their real ancestral homeland is not Israel, but the Greek island of Crete. The Palestinians may not have gotten their DNA from the Philistines, but they did get their name. When the Roman Emperor Hadrian conquered Jerusalem in AD 135, he was determined to eradicate even the memory of the Jews and erase their connection to the land of Israel. So Hadrian renamed the region after their historical enemies, calling it Syria Palestina, the Latin translation for Philistine. So if they're not Canaanites and they're not Philistines, who are the Palestinians? Biologically, they share DNA with Saudis, Iraqis, Syrians, and Jordanians. Simply put, they're Arabs.
Never in history was there a Palestinian nation or a Palestinian state. At that time, nobody was thinking in lines of a Palestinian people. They were all Arabs.
Behind me is one of the most controversial pieces of real estate in the world. The Temple Mount is the holiest site in Judaism and the third holiest in Islam. Muslim tradition says that Muhammad traveled here to the Al-Aqsa Mosque on his famous night journey, and that tradition forms the basis for the Palestinians' claim to Jerusalem. Arabs claim Jerusalem as the Islamic city of Al-Quds. But there's no record that the Prophet Muhammad had ever been there, and even his armies didn't arrive there until 5 years after his death. The city of Jerusalem isn't mentioned even once in the Quran, while the Hebrew Bible mentions it more than 600 times. In Muhammad's lifetime, it was a fairly unimportant city in the Byzantine Empire. It was a Christian city without a single mosque. When the Muslims conquered Jerusalem, they chose to build their mosques on the Jewish Temple Mount, believing it to be a holy site. There they built the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa, whose name was copied from the story of the night journey in the Quran. Several Muslim scholars place the construction of the mosque around 690, while Muhammad died in 632. So how could Muhammad's famous night journey have taken him to a mosque in Jerusalem that wouldn't be built until after his death? The Quran doesn't mention Jerusalem, but says that Muhammad's dream flight took him to Al-Aqsa, which means the farthest place. Early Islamic scholars interpreted that to mean a heavenly place, or the courtyard of Allah. That all changed as Islam evolved into a political force. During the Crusades, the Muslim general Saladin changed Islamic tradition to strengthen the Muslim claim to Jerusalem. He stated that Muhammad's flight took him not to heaven, but to the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. And today, the Jewish Temple Mount is also the third holiest site in Islam, second only to the Arabian cities of Mecca and Medina. Muslims believe that once they claim a piece of land, it belongs to Islam forever. Still, at the beginning of the 20th century, Islamic leaders acknowledged the Temple Mount's Jewish history. In 1924, Jerusalem's Supreme Islamic Council published this tourist pamphlet on the Temple Mount. It says the site's identity with the site of Solomon's temple is beyond dispute. This, too, is the spot, according to the universal belief, on which David built there an altar unto the Lord. The pamphlet also describes the underground chamber the Crusaders called Solomon's Stables. It dates probably as far back as the construction of Solomon's temple. In 1927, a strong earthquake damaged the mosque, and during renovations, archaeologists analyzed the structure. They found beams made from cedar of Lebanon and Cyprus, dating as far back as the 9th century BC, around the time of King Solomon, who had used those very materials to build the first Jewish temple. The excavations also uncovered a Jewish ritual bath from the Second Temple, and a mosaic believed to be part of a Byzantine church. Most historians agree the Jews were here first, but the Arabs will argue that they were here the longest, and the so-called right of return has been a constant theme at every Middle East peace summit since 1948. From the Crusades until the 19th century, the Arab population had only grown from around 200,000 to 300,000. Arab growth was stagnant, and population experts say it would have stayed that way, except for one thing: the arrival of the Jews. With the waves of Jewish immigration starting in 1882, Arabs started flooding into Palestine from neighboring countries. And they came for two reasons. One, to enjoy a higher standard of living in Palestine, and two, to fight the immigration of the Jews who made that standard of living possible. By 1948, the Arab population of Palestine was 1.3 million. The British governor of the Sinai once remarked, "It is very difficult to make a case for the misery of the Arabs if at the same time their compatriots from adjoining states could not be kept from going in to share that misery." Some experts say, if the Palestinian Arabs want a legal return to their countries of origin, they would have to return to places like Egypt, Iraq, Morocco, and Syria, but not to Israel. Today, many world leaders call on Israel to return to its 1967 borders. But if you look at history, those borders aren't from 1967. In fact, they're not even real borders.
The borders of the West Bank are armistice lines which were created by results of the war of 1948. And at the end of the war, this is where the armies stood still. This is how the quote-unquote border of 1967 or of 1949 was created. So the 1967, which is an armistice line, served as a border between Israel and the state of Jordan. And the state of Jordan also annexed the West Bank, and it became part of Jordan.
When Jordan occupied the West Bank and East Jerusalem in 1949, the Jews were ethnically cleansed from both places. At least 30 synagogues were destroyed, and Jews were banned from holy sites like the Western Wall, while Palestinian Arabs living there automatically became Jordanian citizens. So Israel can't go back to the so-called 67 borders for three reasons. One, before 1967, the West Bank was controlled by Jordan, not by the Palestinians, and Jordan's annexation of it violated international law. Two, the land was legally promised to the Jews by the British Mandate of 1922. And three, there was no Palestinian state in 1967, or ever. As Golda Meir once said, how can we return the occupied territories? There is no one to return them to.
The term occupation is when you possess something which is not yours or which is someone else's. This is not the case of the West Bank. When you talk about occupation, yes, there were many occupations over the West Bank, starting with the Babylonians and Assyrians and Greeks and Romans, all the way to the Ottomans and to the Brits. To call the Jews occupiers in their own home, this is really a unique travesty of history. The West Bank was never held by the Palestinians. They were never sovereigns. In fact, there was no other sovereign over the West Bank than the Jewish people.
Tomorrow we'll look at the Jewish claims to the West Bank, including the biblical promise to Abraham, the recapture of the land, and the Jewish development of the land. If you want to see this story again, go to 700clubinteractive.com. We'll have the episodes on our website. But we're also offering the documentary on DVD and Blu-ray for just $10. If you want it, give us a call. The number's toll-free. It's 1-888-777-1999. All you have to do is just ask when you call. It's a great opportunity to give yourself a needed history lesson and then to share with family and friends why we continue to support Israel and why they're a great ally to the United States. Andrew?
Thank you, Terry. Well, up next, watch a little-known part of history come alive right before your eyes.
I found no place in Israel where Bible-believing Christians can go to, and they have heroes and they have history.
We'll go inside the state-of-the-art Friends of Zion Museum. That's coming up next. Well, few people realize Christians played a major role in building and protecting the Jewish state. Now, a state-of-the-art museum in Jerusalem shows the world this hidden history.
The museum greets visitors with a profound introduction, stunning aerials of Israel, while a map traces the land given by God to the 12 tribes, all set to originally scored music. The museum uses state-of-the-art technology. For example, this area is one of the largest touch panel exhibits anywhere in the world. Touch one of these panels, and you can find out more information about Christian Zionists throughout history. The modern features like video mapping aim to tell new audiences one of the most compelling and often unknown stories about modern Israel, the role of Christian Zionism. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressed this history in a 2012 speech.
I don't believe that the Jewish state and modern Zionism would have been possible without Christian Zionism. I think that the many Christian supporters of the rebirth of the Jewish state and the ingathering of the Jewish people in the 19th century made possible the rise of Jewish Zionism.
American Mike Evans built the museum to spread the word of Christian Zionism's place in history.
Wanting a home for Christians to celebrate their heroes and their history. I found no place in Israel where Bible-believing Christians can go to, and they have heroes and they have history.
The museum is based on years of research and this 2-volume set written by Evans.
There's so many of them. I mean, if you just take George Bush, 1844, this guy was a Hebrew professor, and he wrote a book that sold 1 million copies on the restoration of Israel. And yes, his 2 relatives were U.S. presidents.
Others, like Ord Wingate, formed the first Jewish fighting unit in nearly 2,000 years, the beginning of the Israeli modern army we see today. Women like Corrie ten Boom and her family. The Nazis killed her father and sister, and she suffered in a concentration camp because they hid Jews during the Holocaust. And Swedish diplomat Raoul Wallenberg faced death to save Jews.
In the dead of winter, Wallenberg joined the thousands of Jewish prisoners in the death marches to Auschwitz, trying to save anyone he could.
What was it that to face death? I realized, number one, it was their Bible. They had an intimate relationship with the living Lord, and they loved the Word of God, and they were willing to commit their life for it. And with the Word of God came promises to the Jewish people.
Those scriptural promises are woven through the exhibits, from Ezekiel to Isaiah to Abraham.
According to the ancient writings, one day God appeared to Abram and spoke the words that would give birth to the nation of Israel.
For visitors, the experience is wow.
It's an experience like no other. I mean, you go in there and it's interactive. You'll learn a lot of things that you probably never even learned.
I thought this was one of the most impressive things I've seen in Israel in the time that I've been here.
Many never knew the history and now want to tell others.
I am going to tell everyone that I can think of, people in my synagogue, to come here to see how this beautiful land of Israel was not built just by the Jews, but by the Christians and the wonderful people who risked their lives to make us a homeland.
For Evans, the museum lets the Jewish people know that although enemies surround Israel, they're not alone.
They see Auschwitz and what they went through, and they see the alienation in the world today, and they come through it and they say, we're not alone. There's Christians who really love us. And it's just amazing to see that. It gives me hope. I'm not alone. That's enough.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
You know, Terry,
Quite impressive.
I think that story reminds us, and the museum reminds us, that it's so important when we read Scripture to put it in context, right? Yeah. Especially when we spend time in the New Testament, we may look at a particular parable or story or biblical account that ministers to us, but we're reminded there that God, throughout the Old and New Testament, has been weaving a story about the promised Messiah, and we need to keep all Scripture in light of that.
And you know, it seems like today, maybe as Christians, so many Christians don't know why do we connect with Israel the way that we do. We've kind of lost some of the history of it. So it's really good between the hope that's been done with Gordon and places like this in Israel itself, a reminder of what this nation is, what God's promise to it was, and why we stand together.
Yeah.
Amazing. Really amazing. Well, still to come, a Holocaust survivor tells how he was hidden in a bag to escape the Nazis. His harrowing story is next, right after this. Ephraim Bronstein has vivid memories of the Holocaust, even though he was just a small child at the time. Today, Ephraim lives in Israel, where he receives ongoing help thanks to viewers like you.
Ephraim Bronstein was only 1 year old when the Holocaust began. He doesn't remember much about it, but his relatives tell him he's lucky to be alive. In 1941, his family was forced to live in a ghetto in their native Ukraine. Then, his father was sent to war to fight for Germany, while his mother was forced to do hard labor. While his mom worked, he was kept safe by an 11-year-old girl.
She hid me inside a bag so that the Germans wouldn't take us while our parents were away.
Life in the ghetto was harsh.
All we had to eat was rotten beets. Sometimes the Germans forced me to clean the street. Every day they shot people who lived in the ghetto. They took some away to the gas chambers.
There was little protection from the bitter cold. Lack of food and warmth made Ephraim sick, and he never recovered.
I have hypertension, I have diabetes, and I have heart problems.
Today, living in Israel, his life is still difficult. Ephraim lives in poverty, like many Holocaust survivors. So CBN Israel gives Ephraim food baskets each month. He looks forward to every delivery because he needs the food and enjoys the time spent with volunteers.
I like when people visit former ghetto prisoners like me. We are lonely and don't get much attention.
Ephraim's stove was broken and he couldn't afford to fix it. So he took him shopping, bought him a new stove, and delivered it to his home. And we got him a microwave too.
I want to say thank you for coming and bringing me such a wonderful gift. Thank you very much.
Those like Ephraim who were alive in the Holocaust have suffered so much. It's a privilege for us to be able to reach out and give back to them at this stage of their lives. That's just one of the many things 700 Club members do all around the world, touch people right at their point of need and make a difference. Be a part of that. For 65 cents a day, $20 a month, you can be a 700 Club member. And you join by calling that toll-free number on your screen. It's 1-888-777-1999, or you can log on to 700clubinteractive.com. Andrew?
Thank you, Terry, and thank you for joining us today. And today we leave you with Psalm 122, verses 7 through 8. O Jerusalem, may there be peace within your walls and prosperity in your palaces. For the sake of my family and friends, I will say, may you have peace. And by the way, we want to remind you, if you need prayer in your life, give us a call at 888-777-1999. Someone is always here to pray for you. For Terry Meeuwsen, I'm Andrew Knox. We thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you next time on 700 Club Interactive. Bye-bye.